our timekeeper for public comment?
No, not at all.
Awesome, thank you. If we could do like just a 1 minute and a 30-second, and we'll have 3 minutes for public comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
These are
And
pretty high-tech signs though too, so.
you know, let's see, Rebecca, it looks like let's see. Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance again?
Sure, sure.
You do a great job. Thank you.
Good evening. I am the interpreter, Nancy O'Brien.
Hi, thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And I am the other interpreter, David Bear.
Hi, thank you, David. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
I will remind our participants to use the mute original audio button. We're having some audio cut out on the interpretation channel, so we think that may help if you want to remind them to when they join the Spanish side.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
mute original audio. It's in the same interpretation button on
Okay.
Zoom.
Okay.
And Nancy will be starting us out with the Spanish interpreting, and then we'll switch off every 15 minutes. So I don't know if she needs to be named as the main interpreter or.
You just both will be named as interpreters, but we don't know why you haven't gone into that yet. So
Let me go ahead and fix something. We haven't gotten you into the interpretation part yet. One moment.
manage language interpretation.
Okay, so Right here?
Update, try update. Now it's good to go.
does that work?
And then
Hearing something from somebody.
I'm glad you're back on, but I asked Bob to be our timekeeper.
Oh, I lost my job. Oh, well.
That's okay. There'll be more jobs for you, don't worry. So it's 7 o'clock, but we don't quite yet have Inez or Dave, so let's just wait a couple minutes. Brian said he was going to be unable to attend tonight, so.
Brian wasn't going to be there tonight.
Yes, he was not feeling well, so he sent an email. Okay, Dave's here. Inez, are you here? I see you, but I don't.
I am. I'm trying to figure out this camera thing, but yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, it's 7:01, so let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Newburgh School District Board of Directors. Joe, would you mind giving the intro in Spanish so that our Spanish attendees, they can switch?
Buenas noches, como siempre tenemos interpretación. Hay un botón que dice interpretation o interpretación en inglés o español. Y si ustedes quieren, por favor, después de escoger el lenguaje, tiene otro botón que dice mute original audio o hacer mudo el audio original. Si usa esa también creo que va a funcionar mejor. ¿Está bien? Así que gracias por haber venido y ya estamos pronto para empezar.
Thank you. And Director Pyros has volunteered to lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so we've got an exciting agenda tonight, as always. After we have our public comments, we'll go into board comments and superintendent comments. We'll review our consent agenda, and then we'll have a facilities and safe school report from Larry Hampton and a special programs report from Ann Zeal. A quick discussion regarding OSBA summer conference. It looks a little bit different this year, like everything. We'll take a break around 8:25. Our old business is to approve our superintendent evaluation process for the coming year and also amend the academic calendar. And then we will hear new business from Derek Brown, our SIA amended plan for 2020-2021. So with that, let's get started. I think, Jen, we have only one public comment tonight. Are there more? One? Okay, great. So I'll quickly read this reminder for everybody. The Newburgh School Board invites and encourages citizens' attendance and involvement. The board encourages citizens to share their ideas, opinions, raise questions, concerns, or compliments. Thank you to everyone who has submitted a request to speak and for those who sent in comments. In order to conduct a timely meeting, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. And of course, requests to speak during the meeting are not accepted. When called, please state your name, relationship to the district, place of residence, and the subject which you will be addressing. The board may choose not to address your request if your topic is outside of the scope of board governance. We ask that you remember that Oregon law prohibits us from discussing specific employees or their job performance. We also remind you that due to the judiciary nature of the board's role in resolving personnel issues, we cannot hear complaints specific to staff or incidents involving current issues under review in the board complaint process. If comments pertain to board actions or specific board members, I ask that you refrain from personal or character attacks. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. As a board, the comments that we hear help guide us in our decisions and help educate us and leaders in the community. So I believe Mr. Casey is the commenter we have tonight. So watch Director Woodruff. He's going to give you a 1-minute signal and then a 30-second. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks. So my comments are this. You know, this school board has outright failed. You failed our children, failed the parents, failed the school, and you failed the community. We spent a year, or maybe even more, that our kids were home and couldn't attend school. And then only recently, our kids have been able to go back to school, but for 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, wearing, you know, a face diaper, even though, you know, there's no science at all to support that, but that's a whole different argument. So you would think that this board would have been spending the last couple of years figuring out ways to kind of get our kids to figure out a way to bridge the gap with the year of time that they missed education-wise, all the social development that they've missed out on. But instead, what did this board figure out to do? At least 5 members of this board, what did they vote on to do? Well, you voted on a resolution that claims that there's systemic racism throughout Newburgh. No science to back that up, no facts to back that up, but you did it anyway. And you then, by definition, accused us, the people of Newburgh, as being racist. Again, not a fact to back that up, because we're not. Then you went around and you said, okay, let's do a resolution to seek to limit what children can say on school grounds and off school grounds. Now, I get, woke left-wing progressives don't like the Constitution, but for those of us that do, I can remind you that you can't limit what people can say off school grounds. It's a violation of First Amendment rights. You know, I've had people on this board personally tell me that we are so racist that we just don't even know how racist we are. We say things and do things that are racist, and we just don't even know how racist we are. Now, none of these things do anything to further education. None of them are true. None of them help anything at all. But yet this is what this board has spent their time doing. Supporting and passing resolutions that call the people of Newburgh racist, and then passing unconstitutional resolutions seeking to limit what our kids can say at school and off school grounds. The damage that this board, at least most, not all, but most has done to this community and the kids in it is almost undescribable. And I hope that a lot of people are listening, because we don't have to take this. We don't have to continue on this route. You know, we have an election on May 18th where we can vote out 3 current school board members and vote in 3 other school board members. DeHart, Powell, Reed, good people who actually want to do things for our children, get our kids back into school, have them actually face-to-face with their other students without wearing masks, and who aren't going to spend all of their time telling the people of Newburgh how racist and horrible we are. I mean, this board, in addition, this board has sought to, the board along with the superintendent has gone after anyone who has gone against this woke, left-wing progressive agenda that seems to drive everything that this board does. A couple people hold a rally just at the beginning of the parade. This board tells them they're going to seek legal action, which never happened. There's guns there. No, there wasn't. There was actually.
Mr. Casey, I hate to have to cut you off, but that is the 3-minute mark, but we appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you for coming. Okay, next up we have board comments. Does anybody want to start us off? Nope. Okay, I'll just go down the list. Director Brown, do you have any comments this evening? Oh, you're muted.
Joe, all right. I just need a second after that, so I'm gonna wait a second. I mean, go ahead, I'll come back.
Okay. Director Mock, do you have comments this evening?
I want to thank Brandon Cooper for visiting us again, as he did a couple months ago. Brandon and I had a conversation. He was graciously agreed to meet with me, and we met at Jaquith Park and had a nice conversation in the cold for 45 minutes or so. And I really appreciated him taking his time to do that. As I expressed to him there, the concern that I have for equity has nothing to do with leftism or wokeness. It comes straight from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And it is possible to base your concern for equity in this district directly on the Constitution. I doubt that he loves the Constitution more than I do. Thank you for giving me a chance to express that again, Brandon. I hope you're having a good evening.
Director Brown, are you ready?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Director Pena, do you have any comments this evening?
I do. Thank you. You know, donating our time to be on this board has been an incredible learning opportunity, and running a campaign this time around has presented new challenges and also new learning. There are things that I'm upset about, that have saddened me about the community that I grew up in, the district that saw me graduate. And there are also things that I'm proud of. I'm proud that more people are engaging in a small election. And I encourage everybody to go out and vote next week, manifesting a win for equity, a win for racial justice. And really like a win for really acknowledging the lived experiences of people of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Woodruff, do you have any comments this evening?
Yes, as we've mentioned, the election is coming up, and as my time on the board gets shorter, one of the things which I'm reminded about, I've said it many times, I'll probably say it again, is that local government is either boringly fascinating or fascinatingly boring. I'll remind the current and whoever the future board members are that, the board doesn't do any work. Our teachers, our staff, our administrators, our parents, our students, they do the work. We have a lot of meetings and we set guidance and policy. But, we aren't the ones who do the work. And if we're doing our jobs well, most folks are going to find what we do really boring, because it's a lot of long-term planning. It's a lot of time listening to the needs of our community as well as our employees. And I just want to remind folks that I think it's fascinating, but to really watch the work of the board, if it's done well, has a very boring quality to it.
I hope tonight's meeting is not boring in a good way, but yes, you're right. Right. Director Pyros, do you have any comments this evening?
Yes, I do. I've been thinking about the election and I've read up on all the candidates and I have some balanced, common sense statements to say about the various platforms or ideas that have come up from the candidates. Number one is that Newburgh School Board or School District has not had a curriculum decision on social studies since 2007. And we are not in the process of updating the curriculum. We are not looking to adopt critical race theory or Project 1619. And there's no individual person doing that in the Newburgh School District. So that element of the campaign is mute for Newburgh. Another candidate mentioned the budget, that she'd like to see more things differently allotted. And right now we're in the middle of budget committee meetings and they are open to the public and you can ask for the budget to review it. And if you have anything you think needs to be changed, now is the time to get involved. The budget committee is made up of board members and community members. The other talk about has been about parent involvement. And since I've been on the board in 2018, I have been to many parent engagements with a strategic plan, meetings with the SSA, with the bond committee meeting, which the bond committee members were over 20 community members, parents and teachers. And then through that process with also the ad hoc committee on the start time, we only started that out of parent engagement, parent recommendations, parent pleading with us at the comments level of our board meeting, so that if you know of any other areas we can engage parents better, we want to know. And fourthly, about the comments about, or thirdly, I should say, about the need for more vocational training. In the November election, we voted for a bond that will completely redesign the Newburgh High School Career Technical Center. And we have joined the Willamette Career Academy that will give our students more opportunities, so that that is something that we have listened to. And then fourthly, the idea that we need to have economics or civics in our curriculum. We already do. That is a graduation requirement. And so that is already dealt with. And so I want to encourage all those who are running for school board, that school board members take care of the budget, the policies, and hiring the superintendent and supervising the superintendent. We don't take care of the operation factor of the school, but being a part of the school board is an act of service. We are public servants, and I want to encourage, if you win, to come being a servant to the public, not with your own agenda. And if you don't win, to come and be active on our various committees we have open. Thank you very much.
Hey,
Thank
Brandy,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to say, I mean, we hear these different things being said. But I have been out in the community here a lot lately, and I know we all have our opinions and we all have our thoughts on how things should go. But when we talk about a campaign, some of the stuff that's being done out there is on Facebook. This needs to change. I mean, how people are being attacked, baseless, people probably on this Zoom meeting. We have got to stop this kind of stuff that just doesn't even merit the truth. And it's bad. We talk about our resolutions we pass through. We don't want kids bullied. We're doing it. Adults are doing it. It's no way to be as adults in this community. This last weekend, over $1,000 in signs were stolen in this community, in Newburgh, Dundee, just taken, destroyed, wherever they're at. The police are looking into it. Hopefully they'll be, with all the cameras, they might be able to come to some resolution on something like that. But who would do things like this? I mean, seriously, it's so out of hand that who would do that? And I just think as a board, when we have people like Brandon call in, whether we agree with them or not, whether or not, we want to look at the public. I told you guys this a year ago. There's a lot of people in our community that are probably happy with this, but there's a lot of people in our community that are not happy with this. But we tend to get defensive. And I get it, you guys. Bob's right a little bit. It can get a little boring. It's a little dry. And I don't think a lot of people, we've talked about this as a board, we have not, even our staff sometimes doesn't even know what the board does. I think that's something moving forward, Brandy, we really need to work on is with our staff and the people in the community, that they really, somehow we get this involved so people really do know, how we actually work. And, but at the end of the day though, they do look at the school board as the last, thing there for the public. And whether or not we like what they think or we don't like what they think, that's not really why we should be here. We should be here to represent, all our kids. And I've tried for the last 2 weeks since our last board meeting to look at Martin Luther King's statement from 1968. And it wasn't popular at the time with a lot of people, and it's not popular now. He wanted his children to be judged not on the color of their skin, but the content of their heart. And I'm asking for everybody that's listening to this tonight, all the people that have attacked me or say bad things to the board or good things, look that up, because I think that's where we've got to get back to. And even on our own time on the board right here, we've got to get back to what Dr. King was trying to say back then, because it's very true today. And I think as a board, people look at us as very public, that we need to, they're looking at us to make these kind of decisions, and they're not always going to be popular, like the start times, but we can't be defensive. We've got to represent everybody. Thank you.
All right. Well, with kids back in school buildings, it feels like a sense of some normalcy is beginning to take hold a little bit. Parent groups came out in full force last week to show teachers how very much they are appreciated. And I had the opportunity to watch a few of Ewing Young's finest teachers' cars. And it was really a welcome feeling of normalcy to be a part of a school building community again. So I just want to say thank you to all of our amazing volunteers who made district-wide celebrations incredibly meaningful and special this year for our teachers. The last couple of weeks, I also participated in the CVMS monthly site council meeting. The site council is comprised of building staff, teachers, and parents. Every conversation that this small but mighty group has is how we as adults and leaders support our students. Every single conversation. How do we, in each of our roles, support our students? We all bring different professional and personal perspectives that add to the structures that we are creating to build a system in which no child will go unnoticed and that no child will be lost. Our kids are telling us what they need. Our kids want to belong, they want to be safe, and they want to feel loved. It's really what every human wants. And they're telling us what they need to survive, a safe environment that allows them to develop into their whole selves, their authentic and true selves, so that they can go out into the world and do amazing things. And as the adults in the room and as community leaders, it is our absolute responsibility to help our students feel a sense of belonging and community so that they can succeed in life. Election Day is 1 week from tonight, Tuesday, May 18th. The most patriotic responsibility of every American citizen is to vote. Vote with your conscience, vote with your mind, vote for leaders that instill hope and not fear, community members who volunteer their time in unpaid positions to create a better future in which we all belong, in which we are all safe, and in which we can all thrive. Vote by Tuesday, May 18th. Okay, with that, we'll turn it over to superintendent comments.
Thank you, Chair Penner. Just a short update tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our design teams. We have moved from the listening and learning sessions into design teams. We've been meeting for a couple of weeks. So either 2 or 3 nights a week, every week we are having meetings. We have the group from Edwards, and these are comprised of staff, community members, our architects, and some parents. And so it's been really great to have everybody come in together to work on those. So Edwards, as I said before, Catalyst School, our high school, which is primarily working on the CTE area. Tonight, earlier today, actually, we had our first meeting of our safety and security, which is a district-wide group, because we'll be looking at safety and security, as well as how to provide more welcoming entries and experiences for people as they approach the building and begin come into our buildings. And then tomorrow night will be our first one for Dundee. So I want to thank all the folks who are spending the extra time to be in those design committees, being, of course, run by Brick Architecture has been doing a fabulous job running people through, getting their experiences and putting them in meaningful context so we can get some really incredible spaces and places for our students and our community. So thanks again to everybody putting in all of that time, because I know it's time is our most valuable resource. I'm going to hit up rumor control again because I keep hearing it, so I'm going to say it again. The district is planning on a 5-day in-person, everybody coming back to school year for 21-22. I have said it in multiple places. I'll say it here, and maybe I'll even do a little singing telegram house to house. But you know, we did put out a survey and we collected some information about COA, so our online program. We will continue COA. It's still very popular. It was popular before. It's very popular now, and it'll probably be a little bit less so next year, but it's a program that has had a lot of success. So we will continue with our Chehalem Online Academy next year. The other area that we're still exploring is the CDL. Some people have chosen to, or they've told us that they would like to do comprehensive distance learning into next year. Just as a side note, we have about 1,200 kids who are in CDL right now, even though they could come back to school. So there are 1,200 students who are currently doing that kind of learning at home. And so we're analyzing that data and looking about what we could do to offer, even if it looks like it's a hybrid where they're sometimes taking some classes in CDL, sometimes on campus. But we're trying to find as many educational options, because we know that as many options there's something that's going to fit each family. So we're trying to do our best to make sure that we can provide each one of those. But we know that by and large, the majority of folks will come back to a 5-day in-person regular busing. The other part of the good news on that, and I'm not sure if it got lost in the noise a bit, was that the federal government has extended the free lunch for all through the next school year. So as we have been doing now, which is the way our summer feeding program is normally, from birth essentially to 18 years old, any child anywhere can essentially come and get a lunch and a breakfast if we're doing those. And so the same thing will be true for next year. So we won't be, so all children will have access without doing all of our normal data collection, the free and reduced lunch things, all of those other pieces. We will be able to extend what we have done this year with Shiloh and his team across the district. We won't be delivering them as we did our Uber Eats program this year, but we're very thankful. And actually, it's hard to tell truly what our enrollment will be. So this is going to make things far easier. We'll be able to provide meals. Of course, we know we'll have kids who are in both COA and CDL. Yes, they're also eligible for those things, and we'll have some opportunities to be able to get meals and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify that again. I keep hearing that, and I know there's a lot of misinformation out there in the social media information verse. So I wanted to be super clear about that is our primary focus. And we'll have options for students whose families are choosing to do other things. We want to make sure we have that available because we're hearing a lot of need in that way. We know that coming back to school will be hard for some people. We know we have some work to do around just some social anxiety, some things about getting used to that. You will see later tonight actually it'll be the next time in our next plan will be more of those things in our student investment account. Tonight's an adjustment from our current year, but in the coming weeks when we bring the next plan to you, you'll see a large amount of investment in mental health supports for students, because we know that's going to be a big thing, and we want to make sure that we have those supports available in school at the point of need. And so that's a thing that's also happening. So I just want that to be super clear. The survey created some other misinformation, so I just wanted to let everybody know, yes, we're doing 5-person. Yes, we're super excited about it. I don't think there's a teacher or a classified member or principal who's not just totally excited to run those things. And so we'll get back to a sense of normalcy for some, and we'll have new options for others. So stay tuned on what our final kind of options are. Finally, and this will be something about that the board should discuss in the next several meetings as you want to get into there. We'll start talking about doing in-person and or hybrid board meetings. We don't have the board meeting totally set up yet for that. So we're still working through, we've got some, our tech team's working tirelessly on some deployments of some in-school computers and some staff change outs, some other things we've been coming back and discovering some things. So we're working on those, but in parallel, we're getting our boardroom ready. We have heard from our community that they want to have a live stream. They also want to have a Zoom option. As much as it's not maybe the greatest feeling to do this remotely, we've had the most board interaction and viewership than at least since I've been here. We're having a pretty consistent group of folks coming. And so we want to make sure that we can provide this opportunity for folks to either be at home just to watch or to be able to engage in that way. Or if a board member needed to do it from home as well. So we're still working on all the technical parts. As soon as that's finished, I'll let you know, and then we can schedule the discussion for the board to decide when you'd like to begin those meetings. And that's entirely up to you, but I just want to let you know that is being worked on. We're not quite finished yet, but we will get that ready to go. We want to make sure that the sound all works and the video things work, and we can have the opportunity for you to see people and them to see you, because we want to make it also a quality experience. So I think that is it for my comments. So thanks again, and we'll get this thing underway.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next up on our agenda is our consent agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'll try and do this. I'll move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
That wording was perfect. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. Okay, with that, we will move on to our reports and presentations with facilities and safe school report from Larry. There he is. Hi, Larry. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be there with you this evening. Just wanted to run through fairly quickly. I want to beat the over under on how long I'll last here. So first of all, just in general, in this last year, it's been an interesting year. And if you've had a chance to go into some of our buildings, you may have noticed that lots of them are painted very nicely and look fresh. It's not just because students haven't been there, it's because custodians have been working like crazy painting because they haven't had to do, cleaning all the time. We saved a lot of money on paper towels and toilet paper this year, but we spent a lot of money on paint. So, but that's been great. And people have really pulled together and taken pride in that. We've continue to work on our systems and repairs to things. Again, in some ways it's been easier because we've had more access to the buildings and throughout the day. But obviously, that's not our desire. We would rather have kids in the building. We've also put quite a bit of effort into the procedures and everything for keeping the schools clean and disinfected and getting PPE out to the schools. We've been fortunate that the Yamhill County Emergency Management has provided us with, literally thousands of masks, thousands of face shields and other things. So, we have had to buy some things, but not nearly as many as we would have had to. And in fact, we continue to have quite a bit of that. Again, working on our HVAC systems to make sure that we're getting air changes in rooms and that we're bumping up the outside air supply. We're fortunate, I have done a good job, I think, in the last few years of telling you the urgency of fixing things, but that doesn't mean that our systems don't work at all. Our systems actually are much better than lots of the state as far as these kinds of issues, as far as just the amount of fresh air we can provide and the air changes, all that kind of stuff. So the last thing on this, I'll just throw in quickly. Want to have kind of a shout out to CPRD, especially Casey Crichton, who has really helped the Edwards Playground. If some of us had a chance to be involved in the first part of it that was finished last year, and the rest of it is painfully slowly moving along, but we're getting close to the end. And again, it wouldn't be there without the work and the actual financial support for it from CPRD. So really thankful for that. And bond prep kinds of things. Excited for things this summer. We're addressing some of our immediate needs. The parking lot at Crater and CV has been seen kind of like a gravel parking lot at times. We're looking forward to getting that changed and fixed. We're continuing controls work and HVAC controls, being able to actually do it large scale rather than trying to eke out little bits of it out of a regular budget. So to have the money to actually do that, replacing some boilers this summer, one of the main chillers at the high school. So again, just making some kind of bigger changes that it's hard to do in a regular budget situation, but they're really needed. And so really excited about that. Then also just the opportunity to have experts working with us to identify other needs. We see things a lot, and sometimes it's easy to just see all the small things and not always know some of the other things going on. So having experts looking at all of our roofs and all of our buildings, we know the ones that are leaking where there's an issue, but to actually have all of them evaluated so we can set up a schedule for getting them replaced. That's, again, not a cheap thing and needs to be done in bonds. And so to plan that out, and just looking forward to making what I keep calling kind of generational jumps forward in our systems in this bond, you know, to have so many things fixed and just better, and not just systems, but to really be able to provide a really great CTE building, whatever, at the high school, and to really give some love to Edwards Elementary as well. So, you know, others as well, but those two in particular, just really excited about the possibilities with the bond. And then Safe Schools, just, you know, for the most part, things are rolling along. We just finished the last round of radon testing in our buildings this last year. The high school and the district office and physical plant were the last places. You know, again, everything tested within the parameters that the government gives us. We are working to do a better job of posting the results of those kind of things, but that's good. The next round of radon testing starts in 10 years. So, you know, we will go through again a cycle. It is about a 4 or 5 year cycle with a few schools each year. Lead in water, you know, we finished that a few years ago, but we've found that the state has changed some of the requirements since we did it. And so now they want every sink in the district to be checked. So bathroom sinks and everything, where we just tested ones where we thought people might actually drink the water. But anyway, so working with the state on getting, just identifying what all we need to test and getting that finished up as well. The next round of regular, water testing for us will start in 2024. And that's the way the state has said it. It's that year, 2024, 25, and 25, 26. We will do all of our buildings in that time. And the state has, again, reimbursement for that as we do it. And again, just working with the state on how our Safe Schools information is accessible on the website, so people don't have to search too much for it. And sometimes it's a battle. Just our website isn't the easiest thing to work with and add things to, or whatever too. But anyway, so working closely with state of Oregon on that. So they've been helpful. Fortunately, they're, it's more of, we can help you, then here's the hammer for not doing it right, or that kind of thing. So pleased with that relationship as well. And that's my report. I'm open to questions from anyone.
Hey, Larry, I got a question.
Yeah, Dave.
Hey, thanks for all your work anyway. I'm looking forward to seeing all that paint out there. So, hey, what did it cost to resurface the whole CV Joe and Austin or Crater parking lot?
I'm not sure that I'd have to look through the documents to see. It's I think Greg was looking at that. Yeah.
I looked it up last meeting and actually put it in the chat last time. We still don't have the actual bids yet. We haven't gone out for bid, but the estimate we have in the budget is $165,000 for that. It includes, Larry can tell you more details, but it includes taking up old material because of some accessibility issues. So Larry, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, they determined that, they couldn't just do an overlay. Again, part of it is because our handicap access points are already level. And if we added a couple inches of blacktop, we'd have a tripping hazard that way. So, and plus just what kind of shape it's in, they felt it would be better to take up the layer and put a new one down. So, it's unfortunate. That's, the school is 25 years old and that particular part hasn't held up very well. Like I said, at times when we're trying to paint the lines, it's like painting a gravel parking lot. You have to blow off as much gravel as if it was just loose. So anyway.
Well, I appreciate that. It gets a lot of wear and tear. Thanks, Larry.
Mm-hmm.
Larry, I think I might have missed it. You said something about the state having more stringent requirements to test every sink. Do we have to go back before the 24-25 cycle and test those sinks now? The ones that they might drink, even the ones they might not really drink out of.
Yes, yeah, and they're, like I said, this person from the state that's in charge of that has said, I'll work with you on identifying which ones and getting that. And they have the normal schedule. Again, they've got it set up so that the state doesn't have to pay, every school district in the state on 1 year for all their testing, and then nobody does it the next year. So they want to kind of even it out year by year so they can budget. But they have money set aside for catching up some of these areas that weren't initially, because most districts did not do every sync in the first round. So yeah, we're working with them to do that probably throughout this next year.
So will the state money cover all our costs, or will we have a little bit of a hit?
That supposedly it will. Definitely when we get to the main testing in 24-25, that that is our time, but it's my understanding that they do have the money to pay for all of that testing. It doesn't pay for my time to run around and do it, but it pays for the lab work and all that needs to be done, and that, which is fine.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
One additional thing that Larry wouldn't mention because he's not that kind of fellow, but he has been involved in every one of our design meetings, all of our bond management team meetings. So when he says running around, he really does mean running around. He's been going building to building. A lot of the prep work before you can build a package for having those bids made is getting all the information and getting out to the building. And so Larry has been very gracious working with all of our folks who have to get in, see the stuff, get on the roof, look at all those things. So I wanted to publicly thank Larry for the amount of time he has put in to help our architects and our engineers and other folks who are out there, the consultants who are trying to gather this information so we can get parking lots done, chillers done, roofs done, all the systems and everything else. So Larry, I just want to thank you. You sort of made a small comment about it, but it really is a huge amount of time, both running a department as well as helping all of these folks who are trying to gather the information to help us put together bid packages. So a lot of time of Larry's time has been involved in all those groups. I want to make sure that got mentioned tonight because it is a huge task. I appreciate your time, Larry.
Thank you. The other thing I'll throw in, actually, that's just a side benefit of this whole bond process. Between the architects and the engineers and all of them, they've been pulling plans for all of our buildings, and my frustration over the last 7 years has been, we have all these paper big rolls of paper of plans. We have these big drawers that are full of them. And if you need something, you're looking through trying to madly find the right one, what you need, and have always wanted to digitize them to get them scanned, but really just didn't even know how to go about starting that process. There's not even anybody in town anymore, I don't think, that does that kind of work. So out of this process, as they are taking our plans, they are scanning them, and then they are giving us PDFs of all those plans. And so out of this, we will have almost everything digitized, and we'll be able to access those, almost like we're in the 21st century, which is great. Fortunately, there are people more tech savvy than me that are helping to get it set up where they go. But that's been a great thing. And again, I mean, we're paying a fair amount in this whole process for all the work that's being done, but this is, we're really getting that part of it for free. And it could cost us several $1,000s just to have all that scanned and provided for us that way. So again, a great side benefit.
Great. Are there any other questions for Larry? No? Well, every time I see one of those maintenance trucks zooming around between schools, I think, oh, there goes somebody else doing the hard work. So we know your team is always working hard. And I think the bond is, you're right, it's exciting, but it is more work. And I just really appreciate the whole team's effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next report is our special programs with Ann Seal. Hi, Ann. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to present tonight. I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. So I just wanted to start out talking about just thinking what Brandy was saying earlier with our teacher appreciation or licensed staff appreciation week. It got me thinking about the special programs report and all of the amazing things that we accomplished in this last year, or a little more than a year. So I thought about all of the information I could present today, limited amounts of data for this year. So what better way to present than to talk about where we've come from? So starting with spring of 2020 and the pandemic to where we are now, and just our staff has done amazing things. So I really wanted to highlight our teachers, our specialists, our one nurse in the district, just our evaluation teams and all the work they've put forth this year. So the first slide, there's lots of visuals today because I figured people really have not been in the schools very much and haven't had the opportunity to see all the things and all of the changes. So on the left picture is definitely, February of 2020. And I remember when we had full classrooms and all of our students were in their classrooms together. Classes weren't split in half, or some at home, some in school. And then the right slide is kind of where we're at now after the shutdown and lots of hard work to get back to having students in school. And it's really, really exciting to see them in school, and just students' excitement has grown just for education itself. So in the spring of 2020, when we did shut down, we pretty much had to turn on a dime in 2 weeks or less and set up pretty much supplemental learning, some online platforms, some home packets, and do specially designed instruction. We met with our grade level teams, which we haven't had the opportunity to do prior, where we had every third grade teacher meeting in a room together with their specialist, or every 10th grade subject matter teacher meeting with their special education teacher, to really, really do some hard grade level planning on what does specially designed instruction look like in every classroom. So in terms of providing those lessons, we did that through our Newburgh School District website. Teachers were online creating lessons together. And we just really wanted to maintain our connections with students and have that sense of normalcy, keep our students' skill sets that they had in that moment. And at the same time, we were still holding IEP meetings and doing those virtually, teaching parents how to get on virtually, holding different IEP meetings. And we did not do evaluations in the springtime. We weren't able to bring students in at that time. And so we pretty much started planning for summer school. And we weren't sure how to plan at first. We weren't sure, where's COVID going to take us? Are we going to be able to come? Do we need to plan for both? Which is basically what we did. So we ended up opening the virtual summer school and doing an extended school year for students in special education who qualified to have those services during the summer. And then our school psychologists came in and did a little bit of catch up on some of our assessments that we could do in person. And some of them we did online. So if there were parts or rating forms somebody could fill out, we would do those either over the phone or virtually. We did interviews that way, still connecting with students and families and trying to maintain those skills while we planned for the fall. So during the summer, new guidance came out and we opened with comprehensive distance learning. So we have full virtual school ready to go and virtual specially designed instruction. We also did social emotional learning groups for all of our students in special education and some students in general education. What we realized at the time is we didn't have the capacity of staffing to do all of the service minutes that needed to be done that were on students' IEPs. So we pulled together some different groups within our school system. It was quite amazing. We had counselors doing social emotional groups. We had school psychologists doing social emotional groups. We had our special education teachers teaching social emotional groups. We had our interns from George Fox teaching social emotional groups, and just being able to wrap everyone around it, we were able to fill in those gaps. And it took a lot of creative scheduling. So I want to highlight those people. And then we did do in-person psychoeducational evaluations at the beginning of the year. So our speech paths, our learning specialists, our occupational therapists, they were all out there in the schools in person doing evaluations. Teachers also had office hours for students and or parents who needed assistance with any part of their, sometimes it was just connecting virtually, or how do I do this assignment? So we continued that, as well as continuing to do our home visits. We found that parents needed a lot of extra help since the classroom was now in their home instead of in our schools. We were still instructing, but definitely the classroom was in the home setting. So winter of 2021, we provided comprehensive distance learning and limited in-person instruction. So combining the two, having some kids come in, having some kids stay online, created its own scheduling complications. So some of our scheduling had to be redone and rethought out, and people worked really well together to get that done. We continued to expand COA, and then we planned for our hybrid learning, which is basically where we're at now. This is somewhat what the school looks like. So right now we've got all things above going: hybrid learning, comprehensive distance learning. We've got limited in-person instruction. We have COA online school going. We have Catalyst alternative school going. And we have half of our migrant preschool running right now. So with all of this going on in the fall, it took a lot of planning to figure out how to get all of the students at home the different types of equipment that they needed. So we promoted a check-in, check-out system. We also worked with the Willamette ESD to coordinate some equipment that they provide to our students. So they typically provide things that are for students who might have either a hearing impairment or a visual impairment. And they also provide different things for students who might be in a wheelchair that need to get up and stand for a period of time during their day. And also augmentative communication devices we sent home for parents to use with their children. It's something they would typically use during their school day. Like you see in our visuals, the boy is using a couple different pieces of equipment. He has a special chair, and then his hand has an adaptive tool so that he can keep his body still and his left hand still while he works on drawing and writing with his right hand. The girl in the picture on the right has lots of different tools. So she has her extra large keyboard, which helps her with her visual impairment. And then she has her slant board, which helps her to see on her iPad device, which is also enlarged and magnified. So one of the other challenges we found is it wasn't just about sending the equipment home to parents. It was about teaching parents as well, because some parents already knew how to use some of their equipment and other parents didn't. So we spent a lot of time on the front lawns teaching parents how to utilize different equipment. spent a lot of time building relationships with these families. And I think it's gotten us in a really nice place with our families and our students. They're so excited when teachers come to their house. It's unbelievable. So all in all, this little guy here is doing occupational therapy virtually. So he's using some Play-Doh with his occupational therapist, and it's basically strengthening his hands so he can get that strength up to be able to do different educational tasks, whether it's writing with a pencil, using his scissors. But we also provided reading, writing, and math, specially designed instruction. The speech pathologists did teletherapy back and forth with their students. This actually ended up working better for most of our speech paths because to learn certain letter sounds, students have to see your mouth. So it really wasn't conducive to actually wearing a mask in school and doing speech language therapy. So much of that was done online. Some was done in person. And then our physical therapy was done online, as well as the social emotional groups. And our nursing, Annie spent hours with families and parents because they're not used to actually everything we do at school during the day looks sometimes different than what a parent might do at home. In terms of all of our assessments, this is a young lady doing her assessment. So we had all the acrylic dividers that Larry has most graciously either made or ordered for us. So all of our speech paths and our psychs have these dividers that have a little hole on the bottom. And so you can pass the different materials needed to do the assessments back and forth. And so we just got creative with that. The occupational therapist and the physical therapist had to do theirs a little bit differently. So some evaluations are outside, they're in the front yard, they're in the school for a short drop-in amount of time. And then of course we had to make some changes to our school models. Most of those changes in the end were at the secondary level. And it was mainly so that students could have access to either their elective courses or PE, maybe their social emotional learning groups. So specially designed instruction took place during asynchronous learning time for a lot of our secondary students. So a little bit of data. So looking at 2018-19, we had 669 students in special education. 2019-20, it went down just a tad to 662. And we're currently at 662 this year. So we didn't lose any. We may have, switched kids with other districts, but we still ended up with the same numbers. What did go up a little bit is high cost disability. So we did have 41 students that were considered high cost for our school district in 2018-19. And then 19-20, there were 43 students, and this year we had 47 students. What that means is it's a calculation that we report to the state. So a student that might be in an outside placement, perhaps, like we have a student in the school for the deaf. That particular placement charges a little bit more money probably than we do because they have different services and we would need to provide an interpreter. So in the long run, it ends up being a little bit cheaper for us to send them to a school. We've got a student in the school for the blind. We have a couple in some other outside placements as well. And then we have students that are just higher needs based on their disability. So they might need nursing services throughout their day at different times. And that kind of gets their calculation up a little bit higher than a typical student might be. And these are our numbers of special education students by ethnicity. So we've got 482 Caucasian or white students, 29 multi-racial students in special education, 156 Hispanics, 10 students who are Asian, and 2 who are either Alaskan Native or Native American. They lump them in the same category. I want to talk about Alt-Ed a little bit. So these numbers were interesting. The number of students served in Catalyst in 2019-20 was 181, and then the number of students served 9th through 12th grade this year was 368, so quite a big difference. Currently, we're at 125 in Catalyst, and that's because a lot of them returned to in-person learning. So those numbers are just from last week. And then on COA in 2019-20, we had 77 students. And this year, we had a total of 507. That was the December count. And then current, there's 450 when I talked to Tim the other day. So total enrollment for COA and Catalyst this year was 550 students, 83 of them being students in special education. So that's a nice rise. Oops, sorry, went one too far. I thought our homeless data was interesting this year. So 2018-19, we had 286 students who qualified for homeless services. And then 2019, we had 249. This year we have half that. So 125 students who qualified for homeless services. And our percentage qualifying for free and reduced lunch went down, the typical way of qualifying. And so I was talking with Shyla, our homeless liaison, going, wow, that's a really big difference. That's half. What are those, what do you think caused that? Why? And I mean, some of it is just the less amount of connection that we have to know about the student because they haven't been in person this year. And then we also kind of were brainstorming about the possibility that there were less evictions in housing for people who were renting because they got those protections from the state. So that was what we attributed to those numbers being less. Some of our challenges this year were just scrambling with every new change to create our virtual instruction, depending on what was going on with Oregon Health Authority or CDC or ODE new requirements. We had some difficulty engaging our most impacted students. It was challenging to just get certain families to show up. And then things were just consistently changing and we were needing to adapt at many turns. Multiple schedule changes, training EAs for virtual groups. They had never done virtual groups prior. They've done small groups in person. And so we had to do that fairly quickly. And then again, I talked about training parents on different pieces of equipment. We needed to amend all the IEPs to reflect current services. Just assessing students virtually was challenging, and everybody was learning at the same time new curriculum, new technology, new ways of thinking. There's a lot of positive things that came out of that. We have all learned a lot this year. We also had a lot more families attend our meetings this year. So in virtual meetings, we will probably continue to do that for IEP meetings for parents because we had an excellent turnout. A lot of families work, but if we scheduled it during the day at a certain time, they could kind of tweaked their lunch hour and they could attend with us, which was awesome. We also had a much higher general education attendance in our meetings. So some meetings at secondary where you might have one general education teacher in the IEP, sometimes we had 3. It's like, wow, this is really cool. We all get to talk about this student. And then as Joe was talking about some students experiencing social anxiety, we had a much higher participation rate for those students and a higher attendance rate virtually for students who are struggling with anxiety. Our virtual meetings were cost effective for the district because we didn't have that drive time or sub time. Home visits, we had more of those. Everybody learned new skills. Our grade level teams were able to collaborate. And we actually received more professional development for our teachers, for our EAs, our specialists. And there was an extra focus on social emotional learning. And that was one of the things that ODE was really kind of pushing, and a lot of psychologists were pushing in the field, just saying, oh, wow, this is something students need. They still need that connection and that social piece. It's just as important as the academic piece. In fact, it's going to help the academic piece. And then we all became more thankful, I think. This is a teacher in the top left corner. So he's all over TikTok. It's hilarious. So he spent his last semester with his entire high school class teaching to names in a box, because none of his students, like absolutely none, would turn on their cameras. And on the last day, they all surprised him with the turning on their cameras for him and giving him an amazing thank you. And he gets a little mushy at the end. So it's pretty cute. And that is my presentation today. So anybody have questions about any particular pieces? I'm going to stop sharing here.
And I had a quick question. With more students returning to in-person, do you know, is the SAIL program up and going, or kind of what's going on with that?
Yeah, all of our programs are up and going already. Yeah. So some students are coming to school, some students are staying home for various reasons. So we're doing both. They're doing both in person and CDL.
And I got a question.
Yeah.
What kind of information, I know it's really broad out there on mask, how are the kids dealing with that? I mean, it's something that, wide range of opinions, of course, but how's this affecting the emotions and the stuff of our kids, especially in your area of expertise?
Yeah, they actually are super resilient. So the students are wearing their masks. They're seeing everybody else wear their masks. I mean, a lot of kids are used to going out in public, going to the grocery store, and they're wearing their masks. So it hasn't been as big of a struggle as, we may have anticipated or thought. Occasionally, we've had some students who parents are keeping home just for their own, medical reasons. Let's say that it wouldn't be a good idea to come into the schools right now until, they can do something else, whether it's get a vaccine. And so we're providing services for those students in a different way, whether it's online or in packets or going to the home.
I was kind of thinking too along that, still around a lot of kids, working with them. And one of the things that's hard for the kids is they can't see another person's face. And so they have that inability to recognize emotions of good, bad, or sideways. That's one of their big frustrations. Because a lot of times, like right now, you're always smiling, but I mean, it's hard to always know what people are thinking. You just see the eyes, and the eyes can be a lot more deceptive than that. So I know I've heard that a lot from, that's the thing they miss the most. And it really,
Yeah.
causes some angst there. So that was kind of my question. So,
So we did get, we do have some masks that have the, it's like a fog-proof clear plastic that goes over more of the mouthpiece and then it's cloth around it. So we did purchase those masks for, like, I have a student who is hearing impaired and needs to actually see the person's mouth because they also use, you know, lip reading while they're communicating. And also for some other students who are doing language services in person, so they can still see people's mouths. We are doing some of our social emotional, like social interaction groups, we're still doing online because it's actually working really well because they can, like you said, still see somebody's face and their facial expressions, not just their eyes.
no, I appreciate it. Might be something we think about for teachers. I don't know if the district provides that or not. Sure.
Yeah, we have some for teachers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
And
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I was wondering, are the students in transitions back in hybrid, or are they part of the plan too?
Yes, they are. So not all of them are back. Some have chosen to stay home for various reasons, but yes, they're back and kind of on a rotating schedule as well.
Great.
Yeah, and it's exciting. Yeah. Ron?
I have a couple of questions. One's just sort of curiosity here. I noticed in the homeless services slide, you point out that of the homeless population, it looks like 37% qualify for free and reduced lunch. Isn't that lower than our average across the district?
So that's just special education.
Oh, that's just special education?
Yeah.
But it's still homeless? So, but that's the 125, still 37%. That strikes me as remarkable. I don't understand.
Right.
How that would work out so that they would be less reliant on free and reduced.
Right. Yeah, we thought the numbers were really interesting.
Yeah, okay.
That's why we were brainstorming whether people were getting services in other ways or they were able to stay in their housing because they couldn't get evicted, right?
Right, but
so
yeah, okay. I'd like a curiosity. The more serious question is on the next slide about the special education. You mentioned that you were likely to continue to do some of the things online that you've been doing. Do we have any issues on whether everybody has access that way, or have we been able to solve that problem? I mean, because it's could be related to income level as to whether somebody can do the online. So where are we?
When I was talking about some things that will continue, well, yeah, it could be like an IEP meeting or meeting with a parent. If that works better for them than coming and driving all the way here, we would continue to do that for a parent if they chose, but they could also come in.
Okay, so it wasn't like
an option.
Yeah, okay, I understand. That makes me understand better. Thank you.
And I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I really appreciate the work that you and your team have done for these students. You know, this is what equity looks like, meeting students where they're at, meeting their needs. So having you all go to the lawns and teach parents, that's what equity is about. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Inez.
I'm sorry, I had one more question. Is it okay, Brandy, if I ask one more question? Early in your presentation, you noted how this was the first time that for these students that we'd had cross-district teams at each grade level meeting, and that it was so great. Are we going to be able to continue to do that?
That's probably a question above my pay grade. What's difficult is it's hard to get like all fourth grade students from every elementary school together, but I think it's something that, you know, maybe could be done less often than we did it online, right? Because it takes that much time and staffing and whatnot. But it was really cool. That's what I'll say.
You
Joe?
meant to say fourth grade teachers, did you? You said fourth grade students.
Oh, teachers, yes. Sorry.
Okay, it would be a big job getting all the fourth grade students. I'm just hoping that we can hang on to the good things that we discovered in COVID. And if you make it sound like this was a really good thing, and I imagine it would be. So I'm hoping we can find ways. And I'm talking to you, but there are people above your grade level who are hearing what one board member said about that. So.
What was the question? I'm just kidding. I think, so you're absolutely right. And that's something that we had talked about even at the very beginning, as looking at each one of these systems that we built. And sometimes people got frustrated because it took us a little longer, but we were trying to make decisions that would allow us to build systems that would work, and also things that we might be able to carry into next year. The feedback we got from teachers on cross school, multi-grade level PLCs was overwhelmingly positive. People like, they don't get to see their colleagues, they're in their building, they're doing their thing. And so these opportunities, Anne mentioned it before too, about IEP meetings. People have jobs. They have a hard time getting off of their work to come over to do a meeting, but if they can do it from their seat, there are a lot of these opportunities. And I think that sometimes that gets lost in the noise with all the demands to return to everything that was before, but not everything that was before was working great for everyone either. So looking at the lessons that we have gotten during this pandemic, it would be foolish of us to lose everything that we just went through, because there are certain things that have provided more access to more people. And that's why I think, Anne and her team of people, what an incredible lift to be teaching parents to use very specialized devices that we give all kinds of training to staff and use it daily. It was truly Herculean. And there were many times that people just said, I just can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. It's too hard. I can't do this. And yet they did it, and we figured out ways to make it work. So Ron, to your exact point, yes, there are things that we're going to carry over. I think there are systems we put into place that our staff really responded positively to. And of course, there are other things that we're ready to get to be done with. But I think there are a lot of things that we did very well for our staff. And I know that the additional professional development time was just like solid gold, because we had a lot more folks on board with several other things. But yeah, we have opportunity to do some of those things that we've talked about, how we'll put those together. I know there's a lot of interest among staff to keep the best parts, the parts that work really well for them. And I don't think everything has to look exactly like it used to. I think we actually have, that would be a loss. It'd be a new loss, because we have some opportunities to do things differently that work better for more folks.
All right, any last questions for Anne?
Thanks,
Well,
everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. It sounds like this experience is really going to be shaping our special programs for years to come, and in a positive way. So thank you. Thank you for your team. Okay, next we've got a quick discussion around the OSBA Summer Conference. They're doing it differently this year. It's not going to be in person, and it's going to be spaced out over 4 days on 2 separate weekends in July. So it's a lot different than it used to be. So July 9th and 10th, let me pull it up here really quick. July 9th is going to focus specifically on school board essentials. July 10th, which is a Saturday, will be specifically about empowering youth voices. Then a couple of weeks later, on Friday, July 23rd, there'll be a board leadership and administratives professionals workshop, followed by Saturday, July 24th, raising the equity question, an all-day workshop. So hopefully you all got a chance to check out the link that Jen put in the packet. Are there questions or thoughts? Okay, well, oh, and I forgot to mention too. So since it's 4 separate days, there's 4 separate registration fees. So if you only want to go to one, that's fine. If you want to go to several, that's fine. But I would recommend that you reach out to Jen as soon as you possibly know if you're interested in attending, so that way she can register us. they're being very flexible with registration this year. It's really not closing until a day or two before the actual event. And I couldn't see any special discounts for registering early. So it appears that we have until early July to make this decision as individuals. So if there's any questions, please ask Jen or myself. And of course, as always, any training opportunity that you're able to attend, I always encourage board members to do that. Okay. With that, let's take a quick 5-minute, well, no, we're a little bit ahead of time. Let's take an 8-minute break and meet back here at 8:30. Ron, is that decaf? Oh, you're muted.
No, it's I don't know what to call it, enhanced water. It doesn't have any sugar in it, but tastes sweet. This is peach. This is my drink,
nice.
what I drink all the time now. And I've got my
Okay.
Pittsburgh High School cup. That actually is not mine, my boys, but they never see that I'm using it. So, yeah.
Great. You got to drink with the other hand.
Well, yeah, but I'm not left-handed. I spilled it on my computer. It's not worth it. So I don't want to.
Okay. We got about 1 more minute left. Rebecca, it looks like we have, well, 13 attendees, but Joe seems to be in there, so maybe only 12 officially.
Okay, have people come and gone?
Maybe a few people may have left, but it seems pretty steady.
The highest I saw was 19.
19, okay.
Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that.
And Joe is on as an attendee because he's listening to the interpretation channel just for occasionally.
Oh, cool.
Perfect. Okay, Bob, Dave, can you hear us? You ready to come back? You good? Okay. Let's give him a minute here. Okay, it's officially 8:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. And hopefully Bob and Dave will jump on quickly with us. There's Bob, perfect. Dave, great. So next up on our agenda, old business, approving our superintendent evaluation timeline. This is something that was tabled from the last meeting. Nothing has changed, so it's the same information in the last packet. Are there questions or thoughts on that?
As I remember our conversation, we had just started thinking, well, we'd kind of discussed through whether it be better to go on a calendar year or the school year. And I think most of us had resigned ourselves or were ready to do the calendar year. I think Brian, even at the end, who had raised most of the questions, was there. I don't want to speak for him, but it seemed like he had listened to us and thought maybe that was the way it was going to go and he could live with it. The next question was about the 360 review, and we were in the middle of discussing that when we decided to set it aside. I had raised the question as to whether it should be done so early in the year and whether it could be done somewhat later to make it cohere a little bit better with the timing of the rest of our information. So we're getting all our information from kind of a similar time place. I don't think this is a make or break proposition. It's a detail. And from my point of view, I think I would like to see it put back a month or so, but there might be reasons not to do that. And we had not got to that conversation. That's my recall of where we were in the conversation. I don't know if others of you remember it differently.
Having not been there, I would be concerned about changing it to a different calendar or a school year because of the fact that it would give the review, it would completely change it, and it would be given, I think, in October, which is not per our superintendent contract and also not ideal. So I think personally that this is going to be the best. And if the personnel committee decides to do it a little bit earlier, that's something that can certainly bring to the board and we can discuss at that point.
I think you've summarized the conversation about what time frame to use. And I think we've agreed to do the calendar year time frame. But the question is about the 360 review, whether it should be done that early in the year or not. There were reasons, I think the main reason Greg pointed out for doing it that early was to try to keep the personnel committee from having to deal with the 360 review at the same time as everything else. But I thought our conversation was leading to the idea that there was a month there that they could go back so that they would be closer to the time frame. But again, I don't think it's a make or break. I'm just trying to just, that was why I raised that question. So I don't know where the rest of the board is on that. We did not get to that conversation.
Ron, would you suggest, so when you say bump it up a month, does that mean, instead of September, the personnel committee would conduct interviews, say, in October? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, basically start the process in October. You don't want them doing it in December, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But it seemed like, from what I was hearing, that they could finish it before Thanksgiving if they started October 1st. Greg, was there something I'm missing in that? Because you were the one that
No.
was explaining that.
No, I was just using the recommended outline from OSBA, as well as just thinking through personnel committee. So we could change everything so that September, they determine the questions to ask. October, they do the interview. November, they compile the interview results. The only thing that I would give information to the board is my belief is the biggest toll on the personnel committee is going to be that compiling of all the interview results from those things to make those available to the rest of the board. And that would be coming at the same time that they are, if we do bump it back, where they're also getting all of the evaluation tools out to the board members and then receiving those back and making sure that they have those. So if the personnel committee wants to do that, that's an easy fix to change August, September, October to September, October, November.
Remember also that the 360 interviews are going to be based upon part of this year. We're talking about a calendar year. So really much of the year, and it would be different. I know that the board had discussed earlier about having one of these done for me, but before I'd been around a while, it'd be harder for staff to do that. So it wouldn't be a new face that they're going to be doing 360 interviews on. It would be something that folks, have been here, who have been here, know me. And they'd also you'd be conducting an interview on essentially the calendar year, so that January to January timeline. So they really have from January through September. I do worry a little bit about how much time it does take to not just do the interviews, but then compile the information, because it is a lot of info to put together. Exactly to what Greg said. So either way is fine, but I do think you consider your fellow board members about the workload on that, because it's going to be some work to do. And I think that there has been plenty of time for people to form an opinion or to talk about the calendar year as a whole from January forward. So it's several months of time that people would be able to, I think, probably answer your questions quite well. And a lot of it would be talking about, the actions up until then.
So we're not planning to do the 360 every year. I think it's every other year.
Yeah.
And so you've pointed out a problem that I hadn't thought of before. If we're doing these every other year, say, or every third year, well, I guess we're still only getting the data from the year that you're being evaluated for. It kind of has to be that way, doesn't it? Otherwise, we don't have data. Okay, yeah. Just so I was just thinking that through out loud. Sorry.
Yeah. That just means you have to keep me around longer, so then you can evaluate me again. So that's how this whole cycle works.
I didn't realize your contract guaranteed you at least one more
evaluation. That's written in the contract. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I've said my piece. I think other people on the board should weigh in and as to whether it'd be better to start in September, October.
I feel that September is sufficient. I don't see the need for pushing it back. I do appreciate the time frame of giving, having been on the personnel committee and knowing what constraints you have as a board member to take care of all that details. I would like as much time as possible, so that we're not dealing with too many things at once. I would move to, or I would suggest to keep it as it is.
Any other thoughts on that?
Brandon, it's Dave. I agree with Rebecca. I think it's, after looking at it, I agree totally with Rebecca. So.
Yeah, and this will be the first time we're doing it, right? And so we do it this year and it's too much or it's not a great timing, we can always, redo it and evolve it differently next time too, right? We don't have to stick with this forever.
Especially if there's a year gap between there, that gives us a little bit of time to make that happen if we do it early. So I think Rebecca said it well.
I think the other thing too is being that we're knowing what the schedule will look like when we do select what committees or give our preference with which committee we want to be a part of. Given our time availability will be important to know how much time this is actually going to take, because while I'm on the personnel committee this year, I don't know how much time commitment I'll have available in the future. I'm elective, of course.
We're all behind the veil of ignorance here in that we don't know if we're going to be one of the personnel committee members. And so we ought not to vote counting on not being on the committee. So that would probably be not civil or something.
I think what you're saying, Ron, is we should all be open to that service.
We should vote as if we might end up being on the committee for sure, because you don't know. 3/7 of a chance, roughly.
If there's no more questions or thoughts, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the criteria, outlined in the OSBA process and the timeline as presented.
I second.
Okay, with a motion and a second, is there discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. All right, next up we have Greg to tell us a little bit about a bit of a calendar snafu that we're correcting.
Yes, so I want to look board members in the eye and say that I apologize. I do not like making mistakes that make impacts on folks, and I made a mistake with this calendar. Left out March 31st on the calendar that we approved at the last meeting. So that causes a multitude of problems for us to solve. And one of those problems is that we have a certain amount of student days each year. And so if we put that day back in, then we end up with the last day of school being a half day on Monday, which does not seem reasonable or helpful in any way. So we actually are not ready to present this as we did tonight. We're still working on a couple of different layers, and you might wonder, and also say this to any parents who are watching, I do apologize for this confusion and why this is so difficult. This isn't just moving days around on the calendar. We have state guidelines we have to watch and have to take different things into account. So one of the things we are committing to and guaranteeing is that we will keep the same start date of September 8th, so that is something you can count on. It is likely that the last day of school will continue to be June 21st. We are looking at an option that would make that date earlier, but we have just, since the packet has been created, found some issues with that we need to work through. So we're going to have to bring that back to you for approval at the next board meeting. So apologize double for the mistake to begin with and that we're not ready tonight. And to parents, you can be sure of the start date of school, and it's highly likely that the end day of school will be June 21st, but we will get that nailed down and approved at the next board meeting. As soon as we have all that taken care of, we will immediately begin work on the calendar for the following year, so that parents can have that planning in place and know what to expect in advance. So that's where we are tonight.
Greg, if it's not the 21st, is there any chance it'd be later than the last date, or would it be more likely to be earlier?
No, it would not. It would definitely not be later.
Okay.
Hey, Greg.
Yep.
I've done a lot of calendars, so it's a tough job. Thanks for all your hard work on it. So
I bet you've never left a day out of the calendar year before, though, Dave. You probably haven't made that bonehead of a move that I just did. So
It happens. You're fine. Thanks for all your hard work on it. It's a lot of work, man. And there's a lot of moving parts that only a few people know about. So you're good.
thanks.
I just wanted to say, you know, I appreciate you owning the error, and but there were a lot of eyes on this calendar, and you know, while it's always a bummer to make a mistake, especially one that impacts a lot of people the way this one does, this sort of error has not been reflective of your work or the work of our administration as a whole. In fact, it's been one of the things which I've been most impressed and sort of amazed by this year, is that with all of the short notice and dramatic changes, that there have been very few of these sort of big district-wide errors coming up. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into this rather than focusing on the error.
Thanks.
March is far too long and drags on anyway, so I think it was probably purposeful, maybe wishful thinking. All right, any other questions for Greg? Okay, thank you. We will look forward to seeing the next calendar version. Okay, last on our agenda is new business, which is approving the current SIA proposal with Derek.
Thanks, Brandy. Go ahead and pull up this presentation. Okay, can everybody see the slides I've got up right now? Okay, thanks very much for your time tonight. I'm Derek Brown. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning, and I have just a few slides actually to go through with you to explain an under expenditure with our current year student investment account plan. And our proposal for how to make an adjustment to it so that we can expend the funds. And just as a quick reminder, our plan is organized in these three areas or buckets, if you will: mental and behavioral health supports and safety, academic instruction and intervention, and additional classroom supports. And all of that is aimed at really three primary outcomes. We hope there will be other positive outcomes, but certainly these three are at the top of the list: increasing support for students' mental and behavioral health needs, increasing student growth and achievement in core content areas, and increasing graduation rates. As a reminder, this is our first year. I know we've been talking about SIA for what feels like probably many years now, because we have been going through planning processes. And this is a very unique first year for anything, certainly SIA. As a reminder, the positions that are funded in this year's plan are listed on this slide in front of you right now. We had 4 licensed therapists. That was through a partnership with Lutheran Community Services. A drug and alcohol counselor, that was going to be a position that we hired, but the hiring process was going to be in partnership with Yamhill County. 2.5 counselors, a math TOSA, 1.5 ELD teachers. We have an at-risk student support, half of an FTE. We have a 0.6 FTE of a speech language pathologist working at one of our elementary schools, and then the bilingual help desk technician. That's what you all have approved in our current year plan. Several of those positions were hired later in the year. In some cases, even just very recently were hired. And in one case, the drug and alcohol counselor was not hired at all this year. And that was just the result of going through several hiring processes with Yamhill County and not finding a candidate that everybody felt good enough about hiring. So as a result of that, we have a fairly significant amount of under expenditure, something in the neighborhood of about $750,000. And so I spoke with ODE about how to manage this. We're not alone. Lots of school districts are dealing with this issue because so many of the SIA plans are staff and position heavy. And so all of our neighbors, we're competing with them to hire lots of these kinds of positions. And I talked to them about what the process would look like for us to basically amend our plan so that we could make sure that we expend the funds that are available to us as we want to close out this year well and then prepare for next year's SIA plan. So in order to do that, there are a few adjustments that I've put in front of you to consider. One is adding a special education and behavioral health coordinator position into our SIA plan. That's actually a position that you already approved being in our plan, but then when we had to reduce our plan back to the current plan, which is about 30% of what our full allocation will eventually be, that was a position that we ended up choosing not to fund. Now that we're under expended, we think that it would be a good idea to go ahead and fund it right now out of this set of money. Really, the big ticket item here in the amended plan would be adding Chromebooks. And we've purchased quite a few Chromebooks as part of our just regular kind of cycle of keeping the inventory up to date. And we can purchase about 2,500 to include licenses and chargers and other things like that with this funding. And then I pulled the drug and alcohol counselor out of this year's plan because it's so late in the year that it doesn't look likely that we're going to be successful making that higher. We do plan on keeping it in for next year and continuing to work with Yamhill County to make sure that we have that resource available for our kids into next year. So with all of that said, this quick table shows you what the amended plan proposal is. The therapists were hired. I believe we brought them on board in February. So again, very late in the year. So we don't need as much budget to cover them for the remainder of the year. The SPED and behavioral health coordinator position. And then what you see after that are positions that are already there. We have already hired and are in place right now. The math BOSA is another example of a position that was hired very late in the year for us, February, and that position's been filled. That person's been on board and working and doing really great things for us. And then you can see the Chromebooks down toward the bottom of that table and what that represents. And then also added some indirect costs back in because I had miscalculated that in our original plan. So we have put that in so that we're where we need to be with our indirect costs. In terms of next steps with this, all SIA funds have to be expended by June 30th. It's kind of a no rollover, use it or lose it kind of grant. So we don't have the ability to say, well, we've saved 10 or 15 or 20% and we can move it into next year's plan. Anything that we don't spend just goes right back into the general fund. We have seen our allocation for next year. And it is closer to 75 or 80% of what we expect our full allocation to be. That's going to be something in the neighborhood of about $3.2 million. And I'm going to be coming back to you in a couple of weeks to talk about next year's plan. So you'll be able to see everything that we've lined out for that. In order for us to move forward with the amended plan, the way state law works with the Student Success Act and the Student Investment Account, is we need to come to the board to have this conversation. It does require your approval, and then I'm able to resubmit all of our planning information and budgetary information back to ODE so that we can expend those funds. And again, I'll come see you again in a couple of weeks to talk about next year's plan, which has more moving parts to it because it's more money.
Great, thank you, Derek. Are there any questions?
Could you go back to the one that showed the positions? Yeah, that one there. So the SPED behavior health coordinator that was shown here is one that would be hired with this amendment. Is that correct?
Yeah, the position actually is already hired. We have the position filled. So the reason that you see that particular budget number attached to it is that that's the amount of money that we need to cover it through the end of this year. That's an example of a position that you'll see again when I see you in a couple of weeks. It'll roll over into next year's plan and it'll have a different budget number attached to it because it'll represent the whole year.
So the amendment to the plan is to pay for a person we've already hired that wasn't in the original, the original amended plan? I'm not quite sure. So what caught my eye here is if this person is being hired now and they're being paid 51 between now and June 30th, that'd be a lot. So I was trying to figure out how that all worked.
Well, yeah, so the position's been filled, I think, for a couple of months now. Again, you approved the position as part of our original SIA plan. We ended up cutting it out of funding out of this particular funding stream when we had to reduce to 30%. And then when we realized we were under expended, we moved forward with going ahead and choosing to fill it. And we felt okay about doing that because you had approved it in the past, the position and the function of the position. So the 51,000 represents the past couple of months plus what it takes to get through the rest of the year. And that's salary and benefits. That's kind of everything rolled together. I tried to, in the budget document that I sent you with the plan, it's broken out in terms of salary and benefits as separate line items, so you can see a little more detail. For purposes of this presentation, I pushed it together to make it a little easier to
Well,
see.
I couldn't see the specific one in what you gave me earlier. At least I didn't catch it. So that's why I first now seeing it. Okay, so it must be at least a couple of months. I mean, and this person, yeah, with their friends is what you're saying. Okay.
Right. Yeah, we for that particular level of position, if I calculate salary plus benefits, all of that together, we generally start with an estimate of about 170,000 for the full year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question I had, and I think you've sort of answered, I just want to be clear. This position that we've added, the other things you mentioned were like the one-time cost for Chromebooks. That's not a problem, but when we're adding a position, you're kind of counting on getting the next SIA allotment, or else this person would just be out the door again, possibly.
Yeah, so what we're hearing from the state, they've given us the preliminary allocations for next year. Again, it's going to be 3.1, 3.2 million right in there. That's about 75 to 80% of what our full allotment will be the next year, which will be about 4 million. We're about a $4 million per year district. So yes, we have to monitor that closely and make sure that we have good sustainment plans in place for any positions that are in any grant, including SIA. With SIA, we feel a little bit more confident because it is built into state statute. So it's not like one-time federal grants or other, House bill sorts of grants that come down from the state that typically are good for one biennium or maybe two. This one, it does have a different kind of funding structure to it. So we feel pretty confident. I agree with you, Ron, that we have to pay close attention though from one year to the next about what our allocation will be. We've already experienced having it brought to a smaller number, and we feel good about the direction it's going though.
So everybody in this system kind of knows that. There's that little question mark hanging out there, kind of like in budgets in general, but this is another category that might be easier for the legislature to dispense with. Anyway,
Right.
That's given with the program. Okay, I just want to make sure that we weren't doing something that we'd have to reverse in July.
Right.
Hey, Derek.
Yeah.
When I'm reading the graph there, so like therapist 4 FTE at 55,000. So
right.
Does that break down like 55,000 per therapist?
No, that's the total. That's a good question, Dave. Thanks for that. So the original budgeted amount for the 4 therapists was $200,000. The reason that that's a lower number than you might expect is that we have a partnership with Lutheran Community Services, and they've agreed to basically go in 50-50 with us. So they're covering half the cost, we're covering half the cost. And then those folks they weren't in place and doing that work until I believe it was February. So again, it just took some time to get people hired and get all of that work moving. So we just recently actually got the first round of invoices, and then I was able to work with Nikki's team to do basically a projected total expense for the year based on the invoices that we received. So we know that it'll take $55,000 out of this particular grant to cover those 4 through the end of the year. And then again, we have built therapists into next year's plan, but you'll see a different budget number attached to it because we expect that they'll start right at the beginning of the year and carry through the year.
So then they would get like a full salary.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure they're getting a full salary, but this one is a little bit unique because it's a partnership with a community partner that's putting in for half the bill, and as are we.
Okay.
I had another question too, though. So Derek, I mean, going back earlier, I tried to take some time and read through all the people that took the surveys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of curious. I mean, I get where these are at and stuff, but we haven't added any it seemed like one of the things that we were seeing in there in the surveys was to lower class sizes, but we haven't addressed that at all. I mean, that was one of the goals of people calling in, students and things like that, but everything we've added here is mental health. It's indirect management. Every one of them said support. So there's not going to be a teacher out of all this that's going to reduce class sizes. Am I wrong or right?
Well, I think it's a little bit more complex than that. We also have class sizes right now that are in the low 20s in our elementary schools. And I'm not saying that's an absolute statement across every single elementary classroom. But if you look at our system, you see lots of pretty low class sizes right now. And you've been seeing all the reports we've been giving you on enrollment. So yeah, we want to listen to community members, we want to listen to teachers, and we monitor class size really, really closely. So if we see places where it looks like it's getting a little high, we start engaging with administrators and teachers there, and we try to figure out how to adjust. This plan, again, is the 30% plan. This is the $1.2 million plan. In the 100% plan, we had reading specialists in every building. We had a lot more licensed staff. There was a lot more to it. We had to make some hard decisions to cut it down to 30%. There are licensed staff here, though. You see the 2.1, that's the SLP, that's ELD teachers, that's things like that. So there definitely are licensed staff members here. The 2.5 counselors, I mean, that's a pretty big help. And I think moving into next year, we need to continue to look at things like class size. And if it looks like we have a class size issue that we're dealing with, then SIA is one place where we can try to address that issue. It's not the only place we hire staff, though. I think it's a little bit of an incomplete look to only be looking here to see where we might be hiring teachers to address issues around the district.
So when we have, like, for example, like next year, if we had full funding and it's a full school year, we're back in a go, then like our reading scores are hurting in the district. So that's something we could address then, where we could put a big focus on that with teachers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Next year's plan, which again, I'll come show you in a couple of weeks, does have, I think we've got 5 FTE of reading specialists built into that plan, among other things, to try to address, academic needs. And again, SIA, if you remember from that first slide, we're trying to support students in terms of mental, social, emotional learning, as well as direct academic support as well. So there's a lot of different things that we're trying to do here, but again, it's one of our funding streams to try to address important needs in the district.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Are there questions or thoughts for Derek? Okay, I would entertain a motion. From a board member.
I'll move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the 2020-2021 Student Investment Account Plan Amendment as presented.
I second.
3 seconds.
Yeah, then everybody got excited about the second. I heard Rebecca first, but we'll let Jen make the decision. All right, with the motion and a second, is there more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And passes unanimously. Thank you, Derek. And we look forward to 2 weeks from now and we'll hear all about the next plan.
Thanks very much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Okay, with that, we just have our future agenda items. So of course, we will have our SIA plan for the 2021-22 school year. Also reviewing our strategic plan alignment to our budget decisions. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the budget meeting. Ignore that part. We'll set our tax levies, approve our budget, have our monthly financial report from Nikki, possibly our teaching and learning report, middle school achievement report, approve not charging construction excise tax on bond projects. We'll have a set of policies to approve, a school-based health plan, and discussing translation for next year's board meeting. So that's a really big agenda. We might have to pare that down a little bit, but it will certainly be important. Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
I say that email about the support of the police proclamation or resolution.
Yes.
Remember? So how do you want to do that one?
Would you like to bring a first or a draft for a first read on the next agenda?
I can do it now.
Well,
Or-
we'll put it on the agenda because it's not on this agenda. It was when we talked, this agenda had already been compiled and was going out, but we can put it on the agenda for a first read for the 25th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I will add that to my notes. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.